I can say without a doubt that this is the best straight mechanical diver I've ever seen. Although, to be fair, in the almost 4 years since I started this channel, this is the only mechanical diver I've ever seen, which is one of the things that makes it so interesting. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and today we are going to talk about the HVD Spectre, which is a vintage-inspired diver with a Selitta mechanical movement, a domed plexiglass crystal, and a beautiful hand-textured dial. Now, unfortunately, I am a little late to the party with this Kickstarter watch, as the campaign is set to end in a couple of days. Although the good news is that for anyone who is interested in the Spectre, they have already surpassed their goals, so this watch will be a reality. And this particular watch is a prototype that was lent into the channel, so your standard warning about how the final production version may be different applies. Now, this is HVD's first watch, but HVD is owned and operated by Travis Tan and his wife Vivian Ko. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Travis is the force behind HVD's sister brand RZE watches. So while HVD may be a new brand, they aren't new to the industry. While RZE focuses on more modern designs with modern materials, HVD seems to be taking the opposite approach, focusing more on vintage aesthetics with a clean, simple, straightforward design language. So let's get to it, and let's first start off with the specs. The Spectre is going to be a 40mm diver with a 48mm lug-to-lug. And that's fairly standard for divers these days, as it should fit a variety of people. What isn't quite standard is the total thickness here of 14mm, and that is all the way from the exhibition case back to the top of the domed acrylic crystal. Now, to be fair, a lot of this extra height is due to the tall polymer crystal, which is about 2.5mm, and I'm sure the exhibition case back here adds a bit to that as well. HVD reports that the case itself is only 10mm thick, and it does have a nice sleek profile. So the base platform is fairly thin, and I have to say that the domed crystal looks particularly fantastic paired with the taller indices on the dial. But despite all of that, it doesn't change that the end result is still a tad chunky. Now, beyond that, the rest of the specs are fairly standard. You have 200 meters of water resistance with a signed screw-down crown, a 20mm lug width, and a weight of around 140 grams with its steel bracelet. Now, speaking of the bracelet, I'm going to shake things up and start with that first, just because that's where I seem to have my biggest issues with the Spectre, and from what I've seen, most of those are being worked out in the Kickstarter as we speak. So first off, the design of the bracelet is spot on. It's an oyster-style bracelet that's mostly polished, except for the very edges, which line up nicely with the polished chamfered edges on the case. The solid links feel great, and it starts at a 20 before tapering down to a nice 16. And that's right before a great milled push-button clasp. So for the most part, this feels like a great quality bracelet with a rock-solid build quality. My issue, however, is with the end links, and I think there are two big issues with it. The first thing is that the fittings of the end links could be a little better. It's not bad, but just the way the case is designed is that it interacts with those in a long straight line. And when the end links flex down just a little bit from wearing it, there can be a little bit of a gap, and that just sort of exaggerates that line. Again, it's not bad, but it is a little awkward. The second thing is that the end links are made with a male configuration, and that connection point to the rest of the bracelet sticks out quite a bit, making it have a much longer effective lug-to-lug. Now, on the wrist, the watch feels fairly comfortable. It's balanced, has a great presence, and hits the sweet spot in terms of weight and quality. Yet it does feel a little long here thanks to those male end links. However, they are going to change this out to a set of female end links, and therefore it is kind of a non-issue. And with those female end links, it should give the watch a much truer lug-to-lug, and a much more comfortable feel on the wrist. Now, I have one other issue I want to talk about here, and that's that the clearance between the spring bar and the case is really tight. In fact, this is probably the tightest I've ever seen. If you're a regular viewer, you know I like to try out watches on a variety of straps. And with this particular Spectre and its really cool white dial, I was kind of curious what this looked like with a nice leather or silicone strap. But none of the ones I own could fit in the Spectre. The only other straps that could actually fit in this thing are a couple of really thin purlons that I had. And even that was kind of pushing it. So I'm not sure if this issue is being addressed at all, but if it isn't, just be aware that you may be extremely limited on what aftermarket straps you can use. Anyway, let's move on and talk about the case, which has a very sleek and elongated profile. It's 316 stainless and has a mostly brushed finish. There's vertical brushing on the top and a horizontal brushing on the side, which kind of guides your eyes up and down the length of the case. But what really makes this case stand out and highlights that sleek profile is the extra wide polished edges that are along the side. And not just on the top of the case, but also on the bottom as it tapers back to the case back. It's a great look and just a very streamlined, cool design. Flipping the watch over, you can see that HVD went with an exhibition case back. And when it comes to divers and exhibition case backs, that idea tends to be a bit polarizing, with the idea that it's just extra flair, and most people would rather have a thinner case. And for the most part, I would agree with that. However, when it comes to mechanical movements, you usually want an exhibition case back just to get a good look at it. And here they did a fairly good job with that movement. The finishing isn't overly fancy, but it does look good and I like the HVD logo on it. So there may be a little bit of a give and take here on that. Now on the side, you can see that the Spectre has drilled lugs, which are always welcomed. However, remember what I said earlier about the really tight fit. So unless something changes, you won't be changing straps too often. Now back to the front and at the right, you can see that it has a signed screw down crown. And since they're going for that vintage aesthetic, there are no crown guards here. Just a decent sized crown with good knurling that's always easy to use. Now as far as the bezel goes, it's almost perfect. It's steel, 120 click, unidirectional, and a phenomenal action with zero backplay. Overall, this is a bezel done right. And my only question really comes down to the insert. I couldn't find anything in the specifications saying what it was made of. So if I have to guess, I'd say it's aluminum. Now ceramic at this price would be nice, but aluminum is more fitting with the vintage aesthetic, as well as the polymer crystal. As nice as the case is, the dial is the true star of the show here. There are going to be 4 different colors to pick from with the Kickstarter, and this one is the Moonstone colorway. It's sort of an off-white matte dial with a little bit of a fume gradient, where it has this subtle smoky gray at the very outer edge, which by itself looks great, but it looks even better with the black bezel really framing the rest of the dial. There's also just the right amount of distortion at the outer edge of the dial. It seems to line up right with the curvature of the crystal and really adds to that smoky, hazy effect. One really interesting aspect with this dial is these tiny scratches covering it, and this is really apparent when you zoom in on macro. Now, from what I understand, this is done by hand for each dial, and that will make each dial slightly different. This is something I'm kind of mixed on, as the really practical side of me thinks it's kind of silly to scratch up a brand new dial just to make it look old. It's kind of like pre-distressed or pre-ripped jeans. Yet, I gotta admit, it looks fantastic here and gives the watch some real charm. The indices are applied, and they're 2 different shapes. You have simple dots for the majority of the indices, but then you have these really tall angled wedges that sit at the cardinal points. And these gold wedges are one aspect of the watch that I really love. Not only does the gold framing look great against the smoky dial, but the height and the angles on these wedges just really add and give depth to the watch. Not to mention it forms a perfect crosshair, which guides your eyes right to the extra wide gold hands. Then, topping everything off, you have just a touch of color with the red tipped second hand, which seems to straddle the distortion of the crystal. I also appreciate the minimal amount of text here. You have the logo at the top and the word Spectre at the bottom. I do find the use of 2 different fonts a little unsettling, but it's kind of unobtrusive, so it's a minor thing. Overall, it's just really well done. It's a very unusual and beautiful colorway, and if I was going to jump on this Kickstarter, I think this would be the colorway I'd go with. It's one of those divers that you could easily wear dressed up, or just casually around. The only thing with the overall design that I have some reservations with is the use of old radium lume with the indices, as it's not the best at actually being lume, and I do think it's being overused in the industry right now. And with this dial, white colored C3 wouldn't look as good, so I am willing to accept it here. HVD succeeded in creating a clean, straightforward, yet very interesting design. One that feels familiar, yet is distinct enough in its own right. And one thing that I really appreciate is just how different this looks from RZE's diver, the Endeavor. Just from looking at these 2 divers side by side, I never would have guessed the same designer was behind both. And that, I think, is a feat in itself. But let's move on to the Lume, and as I was mentioning, they did use the old radium coloring Swiss Superluminova here, which is also known as Fadium, as it never seems to last as long as C3 or BGW9 Superluminova. Now that off-yellow coloring looks great paired with the hands and the indices, so I completely understand why they used it. But there is a trade-off there for that enhanced aesthetics against the Lume, and the end results are pretty much what I would expect with Fadium, as the Lume starts off strong, but does fade out a bit before my Seiko Turtle. So overall I would say that the Lume is okay, but don't expect a torch that's going to last throughout the night. Although it does look like the fourth colorway, Azurite, is using a different Lume. So if Lume is important to you, that would probably be the one to get. Now, moving on to the movement, we have a Selitta SW210-1, which is a hand-winding mechanical movement, and I think this is the first time I've seen one. And because of that, I can't really say too much, other than it's a high beat and has about 42-hour power reserve. So as of right now, there are still some early bird slots available. And with that, you are looking at a price of $392 US. And that, I think, is fairly good for what you're getting here, as it's a great looking diver with a high beat Selitta and a fantastic dial, and hopefully a better and improved bracelet when it's all said and done. Now, I can't really give you any comparables here, because I can't think of another diver with a mechanical movement. However, if you think about it, most of the Kickstarters at this price come with a Miyota 9015, and I think the Swiss Selitta is going to be a minor upgrade over that. Now, with the Spectre, the only real issue that I'd caution people to think about is if they really want a mechanical versus an automatic, or even a polymer over sapphire. For me personally, I do prefer the later with each, yet I still understand and appreciate what people love about polymer and mechanicals, as oftentimes I hear people say that they feel like they have a deeper connection to a hand-winding movement, that they somehow feel that they're more part of the system. But other than that issue, I think it's a fantastic piece. HVD did a great job here with this one, and I'm not surprised it got fully funded as fast as it did. So if you love the idea behind this, it is definitely worth checking out, and especially at Kickstarter prices. Anyway, that about wraps it up for the HVD Spectre. Now let me know what you think about this watch down below in the comments. And if you've already jumped on the Kickstarter, let me know which colorway you're going to go with. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.